From who?
From sister.
Did
She
you
was
have video?
talking one day and I went and got a tape. But by the time I got a tape, then she was kind of stilted because she said it all over again, but it wasn't as good as the first time.
Yeah, if it was originally, if
Yeah.
she wasn't talking to.
Okay, so we'll be quiet, right?
Well,
Well, you shouldn't be quiet.
why? What do you want me to tell you?
Why don't you tell me about what's your earliest memory of?
My earliest memory of home in Tiffany? Oh gosh. Well, I remember we lived in a small house that housed, well, we had two houses. One we called, as I remember, they used to call it El Jacal, which just had part of the garage, I guess, where they put the car, and the other part was where the boys slept, and another part where they had, I think they had ice, where they kept the ice. It was a big thing. It was right directly in front of the house, I remember. And we had wood floors in the kitchen, and we had to scrub them. As I remember I remember we had to scrub the floors on our hands and knees with a brush. And we had to scrub the side walls on Saturday. I remember we used to look forward to people coming to visit us on the weekend. The relatives that would come from different parts of the area, and friends as well. Bye-bye, honey. And there was a lot of people that that was the thing that we did. We had people visit, or we visited people. We didn't have a theater. We didn't have anything like that. But we had a lot of fun. I remember we had a very good time. We used to look. I remember on Sundays I used to look way over to the little hill by the road, on the road, to see if I see a car coming. I wonder who that is. Could be so and so or so and so. Sometimes they come by wagon, in a buggy or wagon. Sometimes by car. And they'd always come and have dinner. We always had dinner on Sunday, and they'd stay for dinner, and then they'd leave in the evening, But you never called anybody, because you didn't have a phone, of course, so you never knew who was going to come. I remember playing a lot with my cousins, my own age, and thinking how I didn't want to grow up, because the older cousins, some of our cousins from Uncle Porfirio's, were staying with us a lot of times, and they were older, Cordelia, and some of them were older than I. And when they had company, they didn't play. They just sat around and talked about whatever. And I thought, oh, what a boring life they must have. I never want to grow up. And let's see, what else do I remember? I remember very little. I remember when my mother died. I remember the day. I remember that when we got home from school that day, she was very excited, because I think she had some money from somewhere. I'm not sure exactly what it was. Or they had sold some produce or some stuff from the farm, and she was thinking she was going to save that money to send to Charles to come home for Christmas. Charles was away. And at CC Camp, I think, is where he was. And I remember she was very excited about that. And what else do I remember? And the night when she was sick, I remember this. I remember as they took her out. When she got sick, I remember when they took her out of the house. I remember that part. And then I remember when my dad and Gabriel, I don't know who else, I guess just Dad and Gabriel, went with her to the hospital, and they came home that night late, and then the next day they went up, and then they came, and I don't remember who told us. I don't remember that part at all, who told us that she was gone. But I remember the commotion, and I remember when Charles came home. He came home. He had a bunch of candy bars in his pocket, in his coat pocket, and he got my hand, and I guess I was doing the funeral that he took my hand, he put it in his pocket because it was cold, you know. And there was a lot of candy bars in there. and, and then it was kind of desolate after that. Everybody was very sad, and everybody was, you know. And then Uncle Porfirio came later, and it seemed like in those days, the adults, as I remember, the adults kind of talked about things, you know, and the younger people were kind of left to themselves, you know. They didn't, they didn't explain too much to us, you know. We just had to figure out what was going on by just what we overheard, you know. And then after that, I remember, what else do I remember? I remember having people come over to help at the house, and I don't know. And then after I got older, I remember having to work a lot, you know, doing things around the house because there was, you know, we either didn't have anybody to do it, or they figured I was old enough to do it. I don't know. So I had a lot of responsibility, and I was a very poor cook. and what else do I remember? The boys used to tease me a lot, and I hated it. They used to tease me a lot. All the boys used to tease me. The only one that didn't tease me was Mark. He was my good friend. But Frank and Charles used to tease me, call me a name Petra. He used to call me because I don't know why. There was an old lady up in La Cañada, which there were some people kind of very poor people that lived up in La Cañada, and they used to come down. The lady used to come and carry the flour and stuff on her head. Or I think she did. I'm not really sure if she did or if they just said she did. But anyway, she was kind of a funny lady. And I remember she was dark, and I guess that's why they called me Petra. I don't know, because I was dark, and I was, you know, I was out in the sun all the time. I was a tomboy, and I was out in the sun all the time. So I don't know if that's the reason or whatever, but I hated that name, you know. So I was pretty miserable with them teasing me so much. And then, let's see, what else do I remember? I don't know whether this is, I don't know whether I'm going in sequence or not, but I remember when Sister Rose used to come to visit. Well, that was a real nice time, you know, in the summers when she'd come to visit. But she couldn't come very often. She only came, I think, every 5 years. And, oh gosh, it was a big preparation for when she came, you know. We just had all kinds of good stuff going. My dad used to come and get Tia Maria to come over and stay at the house for a while and cook up a storm and do all kinds of festive things and stuff. And she'd come, and we had a lovely time. And oh, when she left, it was such a sadness, you know, after she left, because we knew we weren't going to see her for another 5 years. And let's see. And I remember Charles was a good cook. When he was home, sometimes he would cook, but he would come and go all the time. You know, he didn't stay at home very often. I mean, for very long. He'd come often, but he wouldn't stay very long. I guess he'd go off to workers. And Gabriel was a big daddy. He was boss too. Besides Dad being a boss, he was boss. And Dad was very, very cranky. A lot of the time he would what do you call rasongon?
Complaining?
Yeah, he was always complaining about something, you know. Well, complain to us, you know, do this, you didn't do that right, you know, that kind of thing, you know. And not only with me, but with all the boys and everything. He was rather strict, but in the way he was very fair, because he didn't expect any more of us than he was willing to do himself, you know. And he expected a lot from us, you know. He had lots of rules. And as I grew up older, I remember he was very strict with me. He would let me go with anybody except certain people, because he didn't take us to the dance. My dad never left the house at night or any time in the day. Yeah, he left the house, but I'm saying he never went out at night. I don't remember ever being left alone. But he would let us go out. He didn't let me go out with anybody except Uncle Abel and his girls. I could go to the dance with them, and I could go to the dance with the boys if they would take me. But nobody else. Other people would ask me, no. He didn't know those people very well. And he was very particular, and I think he was kind of snobbish too. A little
Yes.
snobbish. I think he was a little snobbish though. Anyways, I remember I used to cry a lot when he wouldn't let me go, but I remember about him, he would never say anything that he wouldn't say anything that he was going to do or he wouldn't keep or try to keep. For instance, if you asked him if we could go somewhere, he never said yes or no right away. Well, he could say yes, no right away, and we knew that was it. There was no way that we were going to get by that one. But he used to say, "Ahí veremos," we will see. And we'd kind of wonder if we're going to get to go or not, and "Ahí veremos," we wouldn't know until the last whether we could go or not, But he never said that we could go and then say no. If he said we could go, we could go. And what do you remember, Susan, about that? You were old enough by then to know. Remember his.
Well, I remember when at graduation, I wanted to go to a party after graduation.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't let us go. And you kept saying, "Dad, let her go. It's graduation." No, you didn't also.
yeah,
You don't have any business.
Yeah, he was a very strict. And in retrospect, I suppose part of it was the way that he was brought up, the way they were brought up themselves, very strict to parents and stuff. And then the fact that he had the supreme responsibility of raising 3 girls, and boys. And the boys were rough. The boys were hard to handle, especially Charles and Frank. They used to get into a lot of scraps. And so it was tough. It was tough on him, really tough. Gabriel was the one that was the oldest, and he was the one that was more, stable. He was very stable. And Mark was the youngest, and he was also, pretty even keeled. But Frank and Charles were always getting into some kind of well, not real trouble. They never got into any trouble that was serious. But just, they gave him a lot of worries, I remember he couldn't sleep at night sometimes, He'd wake up in the morning and he'd say he hadn't slept. He was always worrying about one thing or another, And let's see, and then I went to school. I started going to school in, we had I started in the beginning to go to school in Tiffany. We had up to the 8th grade in Tiffany. And we used to have to walk about 2 miles, I think it was, maybe 2.5, I don't know. We had 2-room school, the big room and the little room. And then when we finished the 8th grade, I had to go to school in Ignacio because we didn't have any. And I remember having to walk or they'd have to bring me to the bus. And in those days, the winters, you remember the winters were really rough, some of them. The snow was up so high and it was, and then where we lived, it was so muddy. We didn't even have gravel on the roads, so that everything got stuck in the mud. And so sometimes I'd miss a bus, and then it was just a real hardship, And so Daddy decided that maybe I could stay with one of my uncles in Tiffany and to go to school. I wasn't sure I wanted to do that, but I thought, okay, you know, I can, and you know, these were people I knew, my cousins that I played with all the time. But I went to stay with him, and when he took me, I had a sense that I just didn't feel comfortable there. And my aunt, who was she wasn't my real aunt, it was my dad's first cousin's wife, and she was related too, because she had been married to my dad's uncle before that. And I knew her real well, but she was real cranky and she'd get real mad at the girls and cuss at them, you know. What she did. Oh, by the way, that's one thing Dad never did was cuss. He never cussed, you know. He'd say like, baquetona. What else did he say?
I remember him cussing at the animals.
No, but not real bad cussing.
No.
Not the big words. He never
Damn it
used
to
them.
hell and
Yeah. Anyways, but she was really, really. Anyways, I sensed that they didn't. I sensed that she really didn't want me there. So I told Daddy, I don't want to stay there anymore. So as a consequence, I missed a lot of school. You know, and so then Daddy finally decided that we'd move to Durango, so that we could go to school. So we moved to Durango, and then during the war, that was during the war, and the boys were gone, and then when the boys came back, he went back to the farm. He tried to go back to the farm, and so he decided to send me to boarding school. So I went to boarding school for my last year of high school, and then I came back to Tiffany for a little while, and then we moved to New Mexico. We had some uncles in New Mexico that wanted Daddy to move there, you know, because at that time he was kind of unsettled because the boys didn't want to work the farm anymore, you know, except for Gabriel. So Daddy moved to New Mexico one winter, and then I stayed in New Mexico. I went to work at the hospital, and then I decided I'd take some classes at night, you know, and I took a few classes at night at one of those secretarial schools and stuff. And from there, I stayed there, and then I went to work at the Capitol, and then I went to work at Los Alamos, and there I met Bill, and I got married, lived happily ever after. But anyways, that's all I can remember. Oh, there's a lot of things I can remember, you know, about when we were growing up, but you know, they don't all come together at the same time. You know, they're things that come and go, you know, into your mind, you know, little incidences and stuff, you know. But it was not an easy growing up, that's for sure. Not for us and not for Dad, because we didn't have the mother support. So.
How old were you when your mom died?
9. Yeah, I was 9 years old.
And
were you just 9 or were you going to be 9?
I was 9 already.
Okay, so you were going to be 10.
You were going to say?
What? Just so from the time you can remember till being 9 years old, while your mom was still alive, what was your average day like? Was it going to school daily, or?
Yeah, I remember going to school, walking to school.
Okay.
And I remember coming home, and I remember the pleasant parts were coming home and having bread made, and sometimes we never had stuff like potato chips or anything like that, you know, for snacks. But they used to cut up a pumpkin in the middle. They used these huge pumpkins, you know, and they're calabazas, they used to call them, and they used to cut them up and put them in the oven, put sugar on them, you know, and bake them, and then put them on the side. After they were baked, they put them on the side to cool off, and you scrape them off of there and put cream and eat them. And, you know, it's what we had for snacks after we got home from school. And I don't remember ever helping around the house when I was small. I guess she didn't require that, because I didn't know anything about doing dishes or anything like that, you know. I remember when my grandpa died, and it was the first time I saw my mother cry. And I remember that now. Yeah. And I remember going to Alamosa with my mama. When my grandma died, I went with her in the train. And I remember that's the first time in my life that I realized what being tired was, because I used to hear tired, you know, and I didn't know what tired was. And she was traveling with Father McCarthy, a friend of the family's. And I guess I was being kind of restless on the train. And my mama said, "Oh, I think she's tired." I said, "Oh, that's what tired is." You know, what I was feeling. I remember that very, very distinctly, that I was feeling. I didn't hurt anything anywhere, but I just didn't. And then I remember my grandpa. I went there and to the house. I remember the porch. And I remember my grandpa being very, very, very nice to me. He used to call me Genisara. You know what Genisara is? Somebody that's dark. Yeah. And mi Genisara. Yeah. Anyway, he used to take me with him wherever he went. He always had candy. And he took me to where he worked one day. And I remember there was a bunch of steps going up to where his office was, or whatever room he worked in. And in fact, I have a picture of him in that place that I went and had a lot of books around it. And then when we were going home, I guess he forgot something, and I sat on the steps. You know, and there was stairs, you know, there's a stairway going up. And he went back, and there's people going down the stairs. And I remember being so afraid, sitting there, because I didn't know any of these people. I was just a little country bumpkin, you know. I had never been in Alamosa. And I thought, he might leave me here, you know. What am I going to do? I'm sitting here, you know. I remember being really scared then. And I remember being very embarrassed also, because we got home. I don't know when this happened, but I remember being real embarrassed, because I remember my mother sitting on my grandpa's lap. And I was so embarrassed about that, you know. I thought, my mother's sitting on his lap, you know. It just didn't occur to me that was her daddy, you know. And I remember a little bit about the place and everything, you know, but I don't even remember the trip back or anything. Just highlights. Oh, and I remember going to the funeral home where my grandma was, and I remember asking my mom, when did they bury her? You know, I thought she was already buried. I don't know. I was all confused about things like that. Those things I remember about her. I remember going to church in Tiffany. Yeah, I remember when they built that church. They were building that church, or they had built a church, because my dad and some other people around there built a church, a little church there. And the women, of course, used to go and clean it and stuff. And we used to love to go up and down the choir stairs. I remember that. And Prima Beatriz had a baby, little baby, and I love babies. I used to love to hold them when I was little. And I remember dropping that baby one day. Not all the way down the stairs, but I remember that part. Oh my gosh, did I get it bad. I remember one cute incident that wasn't very cute at the time. When I was little, the boys were all older than me, see, and I guess I must have wanted to tag along, and they didn't want me along, you know. So they used to have a dog named Ted, and they used to throw a disc or something, or I don't know what they threw, a disc or something across, and the dog would go get it, you know. And one day they were playing with the dog, and I guess I wanted to get the dog away from them, you know. So I took a disc, or what, I don't know what it was, one of those lids, whatever, from it. And I was smart. I was very smart. I called, saying, "Hey, Ted," you know. I put the disc between my legs, you know. and threw it, and the dog came right under my legs and picked me up, because the dog was, the dog was a big dog, and here I was facing backwards, right into the I don't know. I don't remember if I fell. I must have fallen. I think that's when I remember my mother coming out, because I remember, I was telling Susan that I remember that one time I was crying, and I remember my mother's hand on me, on my hand. I remember she had large hands, and I remember she had my hand like this. She was, again, I don't know whether she picked me up or what. Maybe that was the time. Oh, I don't know what else I can tell you. There were some good times, and there were some not such good times, which is, I guess, true about everybody's upbringing, growing up. But all in all, even though my mother was there, I always felt safe at home. That's for sure. We always knew we had Dad, and I always wanted my brother to marry somebody so he could bring her home. And I'm sure he wasn't going to bring anybody home if he married. I was hoping that Gabriel would marry and bring some woman home, so that we could have some grown up woman at home. So, anything else you want to know?
Yeah, but you had mentioned religion. When was your first memories of religion in church? Or your mom or dad praying or any of that? Or anything? What they explained to you about it?
We used to say the rosary a lot. We didn't have Mass every Sunday. We didn't have Mass. We had Mass once a month. Because, we were out in the boonies and the priest didn't come that often. And we had, but I heard that they taught us a catechism. At home, we learned the catechism. We had to make our first communion when we were 7 years old. And the priest used to come, and we'd have to go to confession. And we couldn't eat anything from the night, 12 o'clock that night, not even water, nothing, until the next day after communion. And the priest sometimes didn't get there till 10 o'clock. And Mass was over at 11. Then by the time we get home, it was 12 noon. So we had to fast all that time. And I remember it was hard, not to drink water or anything, until then. But we had a very religious family. I remember we used to kneel and say the rosary on every Sunday night. And there was a lot of emphasis on God, in general conversation, you could always hear this, sea por Dios, this is the way. And my dad always used to say, I remember even when my mother died, he says, it's the will of God, and very accepting. And I never really heard him ever despair about the fact or get mad at God or say, why did God do this to me or anything like that. I never heard that. And of course you were too young, but even later, he never did. There was always that strong faith. And they wouldn't work on Sunday no matter what. If the hay was down, the hay was down. There was no working on Sundays, that kind of thing. We were brought up with a very, very strong faith. At least they tried to give us a very strong faith. And then when my mother died, my dad kept up the customs of saying the rosary we usually said it only on Sunday nights, I think. And then the fasting, during huh? Well, yeah, the month of May, yeah. We used to gather flowers for the Virgin Mary in the month of May, and we always had a niche for the Virgin Mary, and we'd have the rosary. And, that was something I grew up with my whole life. It was part of me. It was something that was a part of me since I was a little girl. And it's still a part of me.
So you think that it was your mom who did most of the religious stuff and then your dad just kept it going? Or
I think she did. I think
Okay.
she was the one that instructed that was the one. Of course, my dad was very. I remember he used to teach me. My dad took a big part in, because I remember he was the one that taught me the ABCs when I was. They used to teach us the ABCs and how to count. I remember that. He taught me the ABCs, and he taught me to add. He taught me all the things that you have to know before you go into first grade. You know, and I remember I was very proud because I got A's in everything because I already knew my ABCs and I knew how to add and I knew how to count and I knew all those things. It's like kindergarten stuff that he used to teach us. And Mark and I, because Mark was a little older than I, but you know, I remember him teaching us. And I don't remember my mother teaching us. I don't remember, you know what? I don't know why I don't remember my mother too well, except little thing. And Susan and I were talking about it last night, and I says, I should have remembered a little bit more, but I don't. For some reason or another, I don't remember. I'm sure she must have. But my mother was was the one, I remember she was the one to gather everybody and kneel on the floor for the whole rosary. And it wasn't just the rosary. There was prayer after, or it seemed like prayer after prayer after prayer after that, you know. And then we used to have to, after that, we used to get up from where we were and we'd cross our arms and we'd go to our parents and we ask for la bendición. You know what that is? For their blessing. And we'd go there and they'd go with their fingers on our forehead and says, Dios te haga una santa. God make you a saint. You remember that?
Mm-mm.
You
I
don't remember?
remember him give us a blessing before
Yeah.
we left, but I don't remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, they always did that to you. And I remember another incident. I remember that we used to laugh a lot when we were playing the rosary was when this is with my mom again. She used to kneel, and she loved cats, I guess, and she had a cat that and every time she'd sit down, the cat would want to sit on her lap, you know, and when she was kneeling, the cat would want to get on her lap and it would slide off, you know. And all we kids used to have kids that would kick out of that, you know. And you know, we were supposed to be very quiet, you know. We were very strict about not making noises when we were praying. So I remember that part about the cat and how she liked cats. Oh, and I remember, I guess we were very poor or something. Because, well, we weren't rich. Well, we always needed what we needed, but we didn't have any extras. But I remember one night Mark came to me in the morning and he says, "Hey, wake up. Guess what? We used to send money. We used to send for everything from the mail order catalog. And they used to order our shoes and everything. And he said, you know what? He says, they ordered 2 dresses for Mom from the catalog. You know, oh, we were all so happy, so proud that they had ordered 2 dresses for her from the catalog. Because I'm sure she was the last one that got anything, because there were so many of us that and I guess by the time she died, and my dad has said this very often to me when he was staying with me, he says, you know, if your mother had lived, I probably would be a rich man by now, because they were doing very well at the time that she died. And we had lots of turkeys, and they used to ship them out. You know, those white turkeys. You would remember.
I don't remember.
It's a lot of turkeys, a lot of livestock, and the ranch was doing well, and everything seemed to be picking up very well. And I remember that they had gone to Durango, and they had shopped a lot. And Mother had bought herself a new coat. Oh, it was beautiful, a beautiful coat. And some new shoes, and bought things nice for herself. For the first time since I can remember, I had never, well, not that she was in rags or anything, you know, but she, like I say, she didn't splurge for herself. And this time she splurged and bought a new coat and some dresses and you know. She used to make our clothes. I remember she used to make our clothes. So the boy shirts and everything. And that coat, and then she died. That's the year she died. And Evelyn, one of my cousins, was the oldest of the relatives that lived close by, and she was her goddaughter. So Dad gave her the coat, and when she died, she gave a tail, and she had a fur on the collar and everything. It was very pretty. Huh. That's all I can remember, I think.
You talked about Frank and Charles causing trouble. Do you remember anything specifically?
Well, I don't remember exactly what it was that they did, but they'd be gone. They'd take the trucks and they'd go off, and then they wouldn't come back. And to me, it sounded like they were goofing off, you know. And every now and then they'd get into some wreck or something, you know, or nothing that was required any kind of that would be a law or something, you know. But I guess they got in trouble going over to see the girls instead of coming home, or I think they probably spent a lot of the money that they made from taking the posts and stuff over there, you know, and on the girls and stuff and that kind of thing, you know. And no, they weren't. They never. My dad never drank, and the boys, if they did, they better not be come home, you know, with. And until the boys came back from the service, I never ever smelled or even knew that there was alcohol around the house, you know. But you could, after that, you know, it was different, you know. But I don't remember what scraps they used to get into, but they did get into a lot of trouble, you know. They were hard. They were very hard, both of them. I guess they were they used to pal together. They used to get in trouble together. And what I mean by trouble is just not coming home when they were supposed to, and stuff like that, you know.
Did they work the farm though with your dad? Work beside
Yeah,
your
they
dad?
did, but they did. I don't think they really liked the farm too much. They worked it when they were young, you know,
okay.
very young. But after they got a little older, Charles went off to the CC camp, you know. You don't know what a CC camp is, and I don't either. It was some kind of a government project that they had for young people to go and work and earn money. That's where he was when my mother died. And then, where did he work after that? Because he was gone a lot. Oh, see, Daddy had to send him to school in Blanco, yeah, because there was no, you know, about the school problem there, you know. And Frank went to school in Blanco too, yeah.
That was after 8th grade.
Yes. Uh-huh. And I remember Charles went to school in Durango for a while, and then I guess he was only there a year, and he did. See, you had to have somebody you know, and Dad would find somebody for them to stay with while they were going to school, and it didn't work out a lot of the times, you know. And Charles was only a year. He didn't like it. He came home. He didn't like staying with family that he was supposed to be staying with. I remember that part. And then they went to Blanco, and there's where Charles got his neck. He got cut. He got stabbed. He almost died. But
I'm going to change this tape out.